A devoted daughter uncovers a dark secret buried in her father's trusted inner circle. His head accountant has a criminal past. But just as she moves to protect the family business, her father lands in the hospital, and a shocking revelation turns her entire world upside down. Lies unravel, loyalties are tested, and one woman's search for truth leads to a discovery more personal than she ever imagined. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The wind rattled the windows of the old farmhouse as Lena Foster typed steadily at her laptop, the muted hum of the space heater filling the cozy home office. The smell of cinnamon and coffee drifted in from the kitchen where her grandmother, Ruth, was always trying to recreate warmth with baked goods, as if sugar and spice could insulate a home from secrets. Lena pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, eyes glued to the spreadsheet she was reviewing for the family's agricultural business, a legacy stretching back 3 generations. "Lena," came her grandfather's voice, deep and unusually rigid. She paused, fingers hovering mid-air over the keyboard. There was a sharpness in Harold Foster's tone she hadn't heard since her childhood, when a storm was coming and they had to get the horses in early. She turned slowly to face him, startled to find both him and Ruth standing in the doorway. His arms were crossed, face pale under his usual stern expression. Ruth's hands were trembling around a folded napkin. "What's wrong?" Lena asked, tugging off her glasses. "Did something happen?" Harold walked in and sat on the edge of the couch like a man who'd been pacing for hours. He reached into his coat and pulled out a weathered manila envelope. Ruth hovered silently behind him, her face crumbling beneath a forced smile. "We need to talk to you," Harold said, "about your father, and about the woman he trusts most in that company." The silence that followed was too loud, as if the room had inhaled and wouldn't let go. Lena frowned. "You mean Nina Crawford, his accountant?" He nodded. "She's not who she says she is." Lena took the envelope slowly and slid out the papers. She didn't even need to read them all. The court seals, the dates, the words, embezzlement, felony, plea deal. She skimmed faster, her stomach twisting. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern, a name change, a history buried deep under layers of reinvention. "She's been working for my dad for over a year," Lena murmured, "and he doesn't know." "Not a clue," Harold said. "Your father thinks she walks on water, but she's dangerous. The firm is at risk." Ruth finally spoke, her voice soft and uncertain. "Your father is a good man, but he's always been blind when it comes to loyalty." Lena stood abruptly. "He has to know. I'm calling him right now." But as she reached for her phone, it buzzed in her hand. A number she didn't recognize flashed across the screen. A cold chill gripped her. She hesitated a second, then answered. "Hello. Yes, is this Lena Foster?" "This is she. This is Dr. Kendrick from Ridgeview Memorial Hospital. Your father, Bill Foster, was admitted this morning. He suffered a fall outside the First National Bank." "What?" she gasped. "Is he what happened? Is he alive?" "He's in stable but serious condition, a head injury, possibly a concussion and a fractured clavicle. He's conscious but disoriented." Lena's knees buckled. She gripped the edge of the table. "Where is he?" she asked breathlessly. "Ridgeview Memorial, room 214. Lena barely heard the rest. Her phone clattered to the table as she turned to her grandparents, her face drained of color. "He's in the hospital," she said numbly. "They said he fell, hit his head." Ruth dropped the napkin she'd been holding. Harold shot to his feet. Ruth swayed, her hand clutching her chest, and then she collapsed. "Grandma!" Lena cried, rushing to her. She helped Ruth onto the couch, grabbing a cushion and elevating her feet. Her grandfather was already dialing 911, his face carved in fear. Lena's heart pounded, her entire body trembling. Her world was unraveling, one moment at a time. In one morning, she learned that her father's trusted advisor was a convicted criminal, and now he was lying in a hospital bed, vulnerable, unable to protect what he built. Everything inside Lena told her to act, to protect him, to fix this. But deep down, something twisted inside her, something she didn't recognize. The morning after the hospital call felt like the world had tilted on its axis. Lena hadn't slept. Her thoughts looped endlessly. Her father's unconscious face, the envelope of legal papers, and Nana's faint, unreadable smile that now felt laced with menace. The farmhouse kitchen was quiet except for the tick of the old wall clock and the low bubbling of a kettle. Ruth was still recovering upstairs, and Harold had left for the hospital before sunrise. Lena stood by the kitchen window, her coffee forgotten, her jaw clenched. She couldn't wait anymore. The firm her father built, Foster Agricultural Group, was in danger, and if he couldn't defend it, she would. She had to. Lena grabbed her coat and keys and stepped into the biting November air. The ride to the office was a blur, wind whipping past the truck's windows, her fingers white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Every second that passed felt like another inch of soil thrown over something sacred. The glass door to the office clicked closed behind her. Familiar scents, freshly ground coffee, pine-scented air freshener, the faint earthy undertone of the field soil tracked in on boots should have calmed her. But not today. Today it all felt like camouflage, hiding something rotten beneath. She stormed past the front desk, ignoring the receptionist's startled greeting. Nina Crawford's office was at the end of the hall, past the framed family photos and certificates. Lena didn't knock. The door burst open. Nina looked up from her computer, startled but composed. She stood slowly, smoothing her cream-colored blouse and stepping out from behind the desk. Her tone was calm, almost gentle. "Lena, good morning." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Don't." Nina's brows drew together. "Don't what?" "Don't act like everything's normal. Like you're some loyal, mild-mannered accountant just doing your job." She took a step forward, voice low and fierce. "I know who you really are." For a second, something flickered in Nina's eyes. Not panic, something else. Weariness maybe, or sorrow, but she didn't back away. "You've been digging," Nina said softly. "I suppose your grandfather showed you the records. I've seen the truth. Your felony charges. The embezzlement. The lies." Lena's voice was shaking now, not from fear, but from the force of what this woman had almost gotten away with. "You think you can bury your past and manipulate your way into our company, into my father's trust? Well, not on my watch." Nina took a breath, folding her arms in front of her. "You think you know the whole story," she said evenly. "But you don't." Lena's eyes flared. "You're done here," she snapped. "Pack your things and leave. You have 1 hour. If I have to call security or the police, I will." Nina opened her mouth like she was about to explain something, her eyes suddenly pleading, but then closed it again. She looked down at her desk for a long moment. "I'll go," she said at last, "but you should talk to your father before making final judgments." Lena stared at her, confused by the quiet resignation in her voice. She was expecting a fight, a denial, but instead, surrender. "You think this is a misunderstanding?" Lena's voice rose with the bitter edge of betrayal. "You wormed your way into this company, into this life, and God knows what damage you were planning to do next." "I never planned to hurt him," Nina said, almost inaudibly. Lena couldn't bring herself to answer. She just turned on her heel and walked out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Down the hallway, she headed straight to Rick Donovan's office, her father's second in command. A dependable man with a practical mind, Rick had worked with the family for over 15 years. If anyone could help her stabilize the ship, it was him. Rick stood up when she entered. "I heard raised voices," he said cautiously. "Everything all right?" "No," Lena said, exhaling. "But it will be. Nina's gone." Rick blinked. "Gone?" "She's packing up right now. She had a record, a felony conviction, financial fraud, and my father never knew." Rick frowned, folding his arms. "You're certain?" Lena nodded. "I saw the documents myself. Rick rubbed his jaw. Well, hell, that's hard to believe. She was good at her job. Smart, careful. I mean, she practically ran this place the last few months. She was good at hiding, Lena replied, her voice heavy with accusation. That's what she was good at. Rick hesitated, then gave her a slow, reluctant nod. I trust your judgment, Lena. You did what you had to do. But even as Rick's words gave her a shred of reassurance, something inside her twisted. The image of Nana standing so still, so quiet, staring at her desk like it held 1,000 unsaid words, it lingered like smoke in the air. Lena left the office building with her shoulders squared, her face like flint. But as she slid into the driver's seat of her truck, her hand hovered on the ignition. Her chest felt tight, her throat raw. Why hadn't Nana denied it? Why hadn't she fought? And why? Why had Lena felt such a strange, gut-deep ache when she looked into that woman's eyes? Not guilt. Recognition. The hospital room was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was the sterile, mechanical quiet of machines and low fluorescent light, something that buzzed beneath your skin and reminded you life was hanging by a thread. Lena stood near the foot of the bed, arms crossed tightly over her chest, watching her father breathe. He looked older in that bed than he ever had, too still, too pale, too worn down. Bill Foster had always been larger than life to her, a man of dirt-covered hands and late-night ledger work, of early mornings in the fields and long hours keeping the family business afloat. He was stubborn and proud, but never reckless. Seeing him like this, his arm in a sling, a fresh gash across his forehead, bandages taped like afterthoughts to his temple, sent something deep and cold through her. He stirred just before sunrise, groaning lightly. Dad, she whispered, stepping closer, her hand reaching instinctively for his. He blinked up at her, confused at first. Then came the pain as memory returned, darkening his features. Lena? His voice was rough like sandpaper. What happened? You slipped. Outside the bank. The doctors say you'll be okay, but you need to rest. He closed his eyes again, as if even that much effort was too much. Then he let out a long breath. Figures. Damn sidewalk's a death trap after the first frost. She forced a smile, but it didn't stick. Tad, she said, trying to keep her tone even, while you're here, there's something I need to tell you. His eyes opened again, warier this time. What is it? I fired Nina. There was a beat of silence, then two. What? He said, sitting up too quickly and wincing in pain. You what? She has a record, Dad. A felony. Financial fraud. She changed her name and you never knew. I found out. Grandpa and Grandma found out. I couldn't let her keep handling the company's finances. I had to, Jesus, Lena. He snapped, the anger slicing through the air like a whip. You had no right. Lena froze. What are you talking about? I was protecting you. You think I don't know who she is? He hissed, lowering his voice as the heart monitor beat faster. You think I didn't choose to bring her in? You knew, she whispered, disbelief spreading across her face. I know everything about her, Bill said, because she's not just some employee. She's not just a woman I trust. He stopped, swore under his breath, and dragged his good hand across his face. God, I didn't want to do it like this. Do what? Lena said, her voice cracking. He looked at her, and for the first time since she was a child, she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of failure or money or age, but fear of losing her. She's your mother, Lena. The world tilted. What? She breathed. No, my mother was Irma, the woman who raised me. Bill shook his head slowly, painfully. Irma wasn't your birth mother. She raised you, yes. But you weren't hers. Lena stepped back, the edges of the room blurring. That's not possible. He looked at her then, eyes raw and red-rimmed, years of pain boiling just under the surface. Nina Crawford, her name used to be Nina Caldwell, was the first woman I ever loved. She worked for my father's firm back in the day. She was smart, kind, and she didn't give a damn about social status or power. She believed in me before anyone else did. He exhaled slow and hard. When we found out she was pregnant with you, I thought my life had finally begun. But my parents, they didn't approve, said she wasn't fit to be part of this family, said she'd bring scandal, ruin, disgrace. Lena shook her head, her voice trembling. So you left her? I had to, he said. They gave me an ultimatum. Leave her or lose the company. They showed me fabricated records, made it look like she was skimming money. I was young, scared. I believed them. The silence was deafening. She gave birth to you alone, and I took you from her. I had the money, the lawyers. She had nothing. I raised you with Irma, who was already in my life back then. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it tore her apart, and when Irma left us, I kept the lie going. I thought I was protecting you. I told myself it was too late to fix any of it. Lena's hands were shaking. Her breath came shallow and ragged. Everything inside her rebelled against his words, but part of her had always known something was off. Irma never loved her the way a mother should. She barely touched her, barely looked her in the eye. But I found out the truth, eventually, Bill continued, that Nana hadn't stolen a dime. She was set up. The same man who framed her went to jail years later for laundering money out of the company. I ruined her life for nothing. He leaned back, eyes closing again, as if he couldn't bear to look at her. She forgave me, Lena. I don't know why, but she came back. I hired her because I wanted to rebuild something. Maybe give you a chance to know her. I thought if she could work near you, be around you, maybe something would click. Maybe you'd see it. Lena couldn't breathe. Her whole chest felt caved in. And you didn't think I deserved to know, she asked hoarsely. I didn't want to dump this on you. I wanted to give you time. Let you feel it, not be told. Lena turned away, hands pressed to her face. Her pulse was deafening. She had fired her own mother, accused her, humiliated her, driven her out the door without listening, without even seeing. Oh God, she whispered. And then she ran. She didn't wait for the elevator. She took the stairs, her boots echoing on the concrete. Her mind was unraveling faster than her legs could carry her. The moment her truck's engine turned over, she floored the gas and pointed the nose toward home. But she wasn't going home. She was going back to the farmhouse, to find her grandparents, to demand the truth from the people who'd spent her whole life hiding it. The sky hung low with clouds as Lena sped down the country road toward the farmhouse, the tires slicing through patches of damp leaves. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The windshield's wipers flipped frantically, but they couldn't clear the storm inside her head. The truth unraveled like an old quilt, familiar pieces rearranged to reveal something darker beneath. The warmth she thought she'd known from her childhood home now felt brittle and laced with deceit, and at the center of it all stood her grandparents, the two people who had claimed to love her more than life itself. As she turned into the gravel driveway, the farmhouse came into view, its windows glowing softly in the early evening haze. Comforting, deceptively so. She slammed the truck into park and didn't bother shutting the door behind her. Inside, the living room was quiet. Harold sat in his usual armchair, reading the paper as if nothing had happened. Ruth was at the sideboard, placing tea on a tray, the same way she had done for decades. Everything looked exactly as it always did, and that made Lena's blood boil. They looked up in unison as she entered, her face flushed, her chest rising and falling with every breath she fought to control. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice sharp and trembling. "Now." Harold folded the newspaper slowly. Ruth's hands froze over the teacups. "What's this about, sweetheart?" Ruth asked gently. "You know what it's about." Lena stepped forward. "Nana Crawford, the woman I just threw out of my father's office like she was trash. She's my mother, isn't she?" The room dropped into silence. Harold's eyes didn't blink. Ruth's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Lena's throat tightened. "Say it." Ruth sat down, her hands suddenly shaking so violently she had to set the tray down to keep from dropping it. Harold exhaled slowly, setting the paper aside. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost all its usual steel. "We were trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Lena's voice cracked. "You lied to me my entire life." "You were a child," Ruth whispered, her voice brittle. "You don't know how messy it was, how painful." "I didn't need perfection," Lena cried. "I needed the truth. I needed a mother who actually wanted me." Harold stood, placing both hands on the back of his chair. Nina made mistakes. We believed at the time she'd stolen from the company, that she used you to trap Bill. We were scared." "You were scared," Lena shot back. "So you ripped me away from her and made her disappear." "She disappeared on her own," Harold muttered, but the words had no weight. "I don't believe that," Lena said. "I think she was forced out, and you were all complicit." Ruth covered her face with her hands, her voice muffled behind her palms. "We didn't know she wasn't guilty until years later. By then it was too late. We couldn't undo it. So we stayed quiet." Lena stared at them, her heart pounding. "Did you ever think I deserved to know? That maybe I would have chosen to forgive her? That maybe I would have wanted her in my life?" Ruth sobbed softly. Harold stood motionless, staring out the window. Neither of them answered. "I'm going to find her," Lena said, her voice cold and resolute. "And if I'm lucky, she'll even look me in the eye after what I've done." She turned and left without waiting for a response. Back in the truck, her fingers trembled as she gripped the gear shift. She didn't know where Nina had gone, only that she had left the office without saying a word. But Lena had a hunch. Nina hadn't left town without packing up her whole life. She headed back toward Mina's apartment complex on the other side of town, a quiet building tucked behind a strip of shops. It took less than 15 minutes, though every red light felt like a curse. The door to Nina's apartment was already bare. No welcome mat, no wreath. Lena knocked anyway, no answer. She caught an older woman emerging from the apartment across the hall and jogged over. "Excuse me," Lena said. "Did the woman who lived in 2B move out?" The neighbor nodded slowly, recognition flickering in her eyes. "You her daughter?" Lena hesitated. Yes, I am." The woman smiled gently. "She told me she was leaving today, said she was going back home to Georgia, the town where she grew up. Told me she needed to start fresh, finally say goodbye to some ghosts." "Do you know when her train leaves?" 6 o'clock. Said it was the last one out tonight." Lena didn't say thank you. She was already sprinting back to her truck. The station was 30 miles away. She didn't care. She'd drive through fire to get there. The highway stretched out ahead, glistening in the last rays of a dying sun. Her heart hammered in her chest, time ticking in her ears. Every red light became a battlefield, every passing minute a cut across her conscience. She had no idea what she would say. She only knew she had to get there before the train left, before her mother disappeared again, this time for good. She reached the station with 10 minutes to spare. It was quieter than she expected, a handful of travelers huddled by the platform under the glow of yellow lamps. Lena scanned the crowd desperately, her breath fogging in the cold air. Then she saw her. Nina, standing near the far end of the platform, a single suitcase by her feet, her dark coat buttoned to the collar. Her head was slightly bowed, her hands folded. She looked like someone who had learned to expect goodbyes to be permanent. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She started forward, then stopped. What if it was too late? What if she didn't want to see her? She took one more shaky step, then opened her mouth. "Mama!" Nina's head jerked up. Her eyes scanned the crowd, confused at first, until they landed on Lena. Her face crumpled instantly. Lena rushed forward, her voice trembling. "Don't leave. Please." For a long moment, Nina said nothing. Then her suitcase fell to the platform with a soft thud, and she reached for her daughter. They collapsed into each other's arms, years of distance melting in seconds. Nina sobbed into Lena's shoulder, her hands clinging like she would never let go again. "I didn't know," Lena whispered through tears. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what they did. God, I'm so sorry. Nina pulled back just enough to cup Lena's face in her hands. I waited, she said. All I ever wanted was for you to find me. And you did. They stood there, mother and daughter, wrapped in grief and something softer, something like grace. The train door slid shut behind them. The engine whistled once, and then left without her. The house felt different now, warmer, quieter, whole. Lena stood in the kitchen of her childhood home, barefoot on the worn wooden floor, chopping carrots while the smell of roasted chicken drifted through the air. Outside, the trees were bare and the sky hung low with soft winter clouds, but inside there was laughter, real, unforced laughter, floating in from the living room where her parents sat together on the couch. Her parents. It still felt surreal to think of them like that, to say them instead of just him, but here they were, Bill and Nina Foster side by side, like time had been waiting for them to catch up. After that night at the train station, everything changed. Lena had driven Nina back to the farmhouse in silence, both of them afraid to break whatever fragile thread had formed between them. But from that moment on, the rebuilding began, slowly, carefully, like piecing together a quilt that had been torn apart by time and shame and silence. Her father, once home from the hospital, had barely spoken a word when he first saw them together in the living room. He had simply walked over, eyes shining, and wrapped them both in his arms like a man being forgiven for something unforgivable. A week later, he asked Nina to marry him again. No big declarations, no grand gestures, just a simple question over morning coffee and Nina's quiet, trembling yes. They married quietly in the backyard, just the three of them beneath the oak tree Lena used to climb as a child. Bill wore his best flannel. Nina had a navy blue dress that matched the cold sky. And Lena, she stood between them, holding both their hands like an anchor, grounding them to the life they'd almost lost. She moved back in after that, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper, a need, a hunger to be near the woman she had unknowingly missed every day of her life. They spent late nights talking, sometimes about the past, about the baby Nina had been forced to leave behind, and the young man Bill had been too scared to fight for love. But more often, they talked about simple things. Recipes, books, music. Nina liked blues and gospel. Lena liked country. Somehow they found middle ground in Johnny Cash. One evening, curled up on the couch, Nina ran a hand through Lena's hair and said softly, I used to imagine your first steps, your first words. I'd dream about hearing you call me Mom. Even in my worst years, I never stopped dreaming. Lena pressed her forehead against her mother's shoulder and whispered, You're here now. That's all that matters. But not everything had been healed. Her grandparents had tried to reach out, apologizing, offering explanations, tearful admissions of regret. Lena listened once. Then she walked out without saying a word. She wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe she never would be. Some wounds scab over. Others stay raw. But in her heart, she knew the difference now. She knew what real love looked like, what truth cost, and what it meant to finally let go of bitterness and reach for something brighter. Later that night, as snow began to fall, Lena sat on the porch swing wrapped in a thick quilt. Her father stepped outside with 2 mugs of tea, handed her one, and sat down beside her. They rocked in silence for a while. She's happier now, he said finally. I can see it in her eyes. She should be, Lena replied. She has everything she lost, back again. Bill looked at her. That includes you too, kid. Lena gave a soft smile, then nodded toward the living room window. Inside, Nina was lighting candles on the mantel, humming softly to herself. You still love her, don't you? Lena asked. Never stopped. They sat quietly again, the snow falling like a benediction around them. Eventually, Nana opened the door and stepped out, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She smiled at the two of them and said, You're letting all the heat out. Lena stood and held the door open for her, and as they all stepped inside, warmth spilled out into the cold night. Inside, There was no trace of the years that had been lost, only the peace of knowing they had found each other again when it mattered most. And for the first time in her life, Lena didn't feel like she was carrying someone else's story. She was finally living her own.